Hello and welcome to the Daily Fantasy 5 podcast, where we bring you the 5 things you need to know every day in the world of fantasy sports. I'm Scott Gerson. I'm your host for this Sunday show. It is August 18th and it is episode 178. Today we've got a jam-packed show for you. We have four news items from the world of fantasy sports. We have a best ball league to talk about that I have been doing with my stepfather. So it's basically his team. And it's an interesting one. I just kind of want to show you what happens when you go quarterback relatively early, what might happen to your lineup. And then we have we're doing the Dallas Cowboy preview today in the NFL Countdown Extravaganza. So we're previewing finishing up the NFC East with the Dallas Cowboys today. So all that after a word from our sponsor, www.mathradio.com, where you can pick up an online math course for as little as $9.99 to help your kids score better on exams, get better grades in school, and even get into college with one of the SAT math prep courses. All of those courses from third grade to high school are available for $9.99. There's a 30-day money back guarantee, so there's no risk. Sign up today, mathradio.com. All right. Let's hit the news items first. Baseball, let's start there. Chris Sale is going to be on the injured list with an inflamed elbow. So they're questioning if he's going to be back at all this season. So pretty crazy. They're going to go for a second opinion, apparently. This is not good news for Boston or Chris Sale owners. So stay tuned. We'll hopefully have more information to come. They already did the MRI, and it did show inflammation, but we don't know exactly what that means yet. So hopefully we'll have more information on the Sale situation next week. Now let's move over to football. Antonio Brown was back at practice. He looked good. He's supposed to be a full participant either today or tomorrow. So I am no longer worried about Antonio Brown, other than he seems to be a total nutcase. I still have not watched Hard Knocks yet this week. It's been a busy week. But hopefully I'll get to that when we can talk about it next week before the new episode airs. Yeah, it seems like he's a psycho, but he's still a great receiver. I don't mind him at all. He's going to be back in second. Some people moved him all the way to the third round. No. I'm happy to take him in the second round. Other news in Jacksonville, Marquise Lee has been taken off the PUP list. So he's going to be back in the lineup, or at least back at practice. Let's see. He didn't play all of last year with a ACL injury, so he missed all of 2018. Can he get back into the group here? I think he's actually the most talented player, better than D.D. Westbrook or the other guys they have. I expect him to be either the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver once he gets back to form. But the question is, how long is it going to take him? Is he one of these guys that the ACL injury doesn't really bother him, or is he going to take some time to get back into the flow? I think training camp is going to be, in these next 2 preseason games, very, very important for Marquise Lee to see where we're going to go ahead and draft him. I mean, he could, D.D. Westbrook is a guy who everybody's drafting. Marquise Lee could be more valuable. If you can get him super late, it might not be a bad flyer to go ahead and take. And if it doesn't work out, go ahead and cut him. Moving on. Alfed Blue has a sprained ankle, also in Jacksonville. Now, I don't care about Alfed Blue. I don't think anyone's drafting him or planning on starting him, even if so Fournette could get injured, right, or could get suspended or could something. I'm hoping that Alfed Blue is not the backup. I'm hoping to go with the rookie Raquel Armstead. He's a guy I've been picking up a lot of at the end of drafts in best ball, hoping that eventually he gets the job there and can help me out. He's a guy that I'm always targeting at the end of drafts because he's always there. And I think just based on Alfed Blue not being very good and hopefully injury prone here with his sprained ankle, that Raquel Armstead will get this backup job eventually. And then once Fournette kind of screws up, gets injured, or is out of the starting lineup, that they will go with a young guy, Raquel Armstead, and see what they have there. So good news in my book, since I'm not a Fournette owner, I haven't drafted Fournette, I don't think, in a single league. He just never drops to me. He's always drafted higher than, there's just too much risk there in my opinion. So Raquel Armstead is certainly a guy I like even more after this Alfed Blue news. So that's the news of the day. No new words on Gordon or Elliott or anything super exciting out there in the world. So let's move over to our Cowboys preview. Dallas is a very interesting team. All right, let's go through our 3 questions about the Dallas Cowboys. They essentially returned the exact same team they had in 2018, where they won, 10 games last year. Is 10 wins the ceiling for this team? That is question number 1. So I think the only way that the Cowboys win more than 10 games this year is if the offensive line drastically returns to form and drastically improves, right? They were a dominant offensive line for the longest time. But last year, according to PFF, they only finished 14th in the league. So this team needs to be way or this group, excuse me, needs to be way better than that if they're going to be a more efficient offense. So 14th simply is not going to cut it if this offense wants to be, outside the 20s. Offense in DVOA last year for the Cowboys, they finished 24th, which is just not good enough if you have Super Bowl aspirations, which the Cowboys, I guess they do. Again, I feel like they're still a 9 or a 10-win team, and that's just how it's going to be. I suppose if this group is a top 5 offensive line and then Zeke is humming at 100%, this team could win 11 or 12 games. I just don't see it. I don't think the offensive line is nearly as elite as it used to be. And I think that's what's going to hold this team back. Can they be, the 15th best offense? I think that's possible. But I think it's going to take too much for them to be a top 10 group. I just don't think it's possible. And that is going to limit the ceiling for this team because they don't really have an elite defense either. It's a good defense, but it's certainly not elite. They finished, I think, 9th last year in DVOA, which again is better than league average, right? But if you really want to hang your hat on your defense, you need to be top 5 if you want to really make an impact on that side of the field. Okay, let's move over to question number 2. The biggest question surrounding Dallas this year, of course, is when will Zeke Ezekiel Elliott come back from his holdout? So I think he's still in Cabo. That's not good news for Cowboy fans or fantasy owners for that matter. My best guess is that he's going to be back before opening day. All right, so I'm guessing they get some kind of deal worked out where he comes back and he plays. Because the thing is, he's going to lose leverage because their first 3 games, they play the Giants, the Redskins, and the Dolphins. That's got to be the easiest opening schedule in all of football, right? The Giants are awful. The Dolphins are awful. The Redskins, whatever. They always win 7 or 8 games, but they're awful too. The Cowboys should win all 3 of those games without question. But without Zeke, those games certainly aren't a sure thing anymore. But let's say they go, 3-0. What leverage does Zeke have anymore if he still isn't back with the team? Well, we've won all 3 games without you. What do you want us to do? So I think he needs to sign now before the season starts, and they can win games without him because especially against the Giants, they're going to start the season 1-0. I don't think the Giants have anything this year. So I think Zeke needs to get a deal done. I think the Cowboys need to get a deal done. So I think Zeke comes back in week 1 or before week 1, excuse me. But it's not a sure thing. We'll talk about it more in the fantasy segment of the Dallas Cowboy preview. All right, question number 3: Is Dak Prescott, a franchise quarterback? Well, he's entering his 4th year this season. He certainly wants to be paid like a franchise quarterback. He's never even had a 4,000-yard season. He's never thrown for 25 touchdowns. To me, he seems like a kind of league average quarterback, right? He's certainly not a top 10 guy. Is he somewhere between 10 and 20? Absolutely, I think so. But how can you win in the NFL paying a guy like that top 10 quarterback money or even top 5 quarterback money? It seems impossible if you're going to be allocating that much money to one position and you're not even getting elite production out of that position. I think Dallas would be smarter to simply franchise him, or just let him walk and draft a quarterback and try to win with a cheap quarterback. Because how can you pay Elliott, Cooper, and Prescott all top 5 money at their position? It just simply doesn't make sense to me. And to be able to afford the rest of your team going forward, I don't know. It just doesn't. Because Zeke, of course, is a top 5 running back, but is Cooper a top 5 wide receiver? No. Is Prescott a top 5 quarterback? Absolutely not. So I don't see how you can pay him as a elite franchise quarterback when he certainly isn't that. Let's move on to fantasy then. As I rail on here against the Cowboys, I actually like the team a lot this year, but whatever. That's just for this year. Speaking of Dak Prescott, he's being drafted as QB 12. I think that's terrible value. After him, you can get Ben Roethlisberger, Jared Goff, Trubisky, Jackson, Winston. I like all of those guys better than Dak Prescott. You can get them all later. If they don't work out, just drop them and pick up somebody else. But I think all those guys have better upside than Dak does, even though Dak gets you, 6 touchdowns rushing, I think, every single year of his career. He's a safe guy. But I don't want safe from my quarterback this year. I can get a guy later than that has better upside. Or if I want somebody safe, I'll take Phillip Rivers 4 rounds later. Phillip Rivers scored at least 20 points in every single fantasy. Or no, I'm sorry, at least 15 points in his first 15 games last year. It doesn't get any safer than that. So, and you can get him 4 or 5 rounds later. So yeah, no Dak Prescott for me. What else do we have on this team? Cooper. All right, he's going as wide receiver 12. I think that's fine value. I'm happy to take him around pick 30 if he's available. I think it's good value. He was a top 10 receiver last year in Dallas after he got traded, so I think that's absolutely fine. He should outperform that wide receiver 12 ranking there. Zeke is the only player other than those two I care about on this team. I had him number one overall, like just number one straight up before he started the holdout, and now it's kind of impossible to rank him. I have him as RB5, but right now I have him at player number 7 overall. I've got him behind Adams and Hopkins. I don't know how you can still draft him number one, but I don't know how you can draft him outside the first round either. I mean, you got to take a chance on him because, I mean, the thing is, he's got to come back this year, right? Because if he doesn't, it's not like he's going to be a free agent next year like Bell was, right? It's not the same situation. If he sits out the entire year, he doesn't even get a year towards free agency. It's like this year never even happened. You just have to hit the refresh button. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to hold out the entire year. It makes sense to hold out right now and try to get your money, but he needs to play this year or at least part of the year so he gets that year of free agency taken off his books so that he becomes a year free agent faster. So, I mean, yeah, there's risk that he might sit out the first 3 games, something like that, first couple games, but I still think you have to draft him in the first round. And actually, now that I'm saying it, I think I'm going to keep him at 5. I moved him to 7, put the wide receivers in front. I think I'm going to gamble a little bit and keep him at number 5, thinking that he's going to be back at least after week 1. So that's it for fantasy. Let's switch to the over/under for the Dallas Cowboys. Vegas has them at 9 wins. I had them at 10 wins before the holdout news. I still think they win all 3 games without Zeke there. But I guess they could drop one of those games, especially that Washington game. They could lose that game without Ezekiel Elliott. So I'm not taking a side here either way. If anything, I probably would go back and give them 9 wins now and just, have them losing one of those first 3 games. But I'm just not going to take a side here. So even though I have the over at 10, I certainly won't be betting the Dallas Cowboys over this season, although I did like them a lot before this news came out. So now let's switch over and we will talk a little bit about our mock draft. It is mock draft Sunday here. It's not a mock draft. It's a best ball league 12-teamer. And this is the one I did with my stepdad. We kind of did it together. This was his first best ball team. Kind of explained it to him. And he's actually up next year in the 11th round. But we've got 10 rounds to talk about. So what he did in the first round, he had pick number 11. So he went wide receiver. He went with Tyreek Hill. I think that's a great value. I like Tyreek Hill at number 11. I think that's superb. So I was happy with that first pick. But then with pick number 2, we took Antonio Brown. Maybe a little bit high for Antonio Brown. He thought he was the best player on the board. I don't doubt it at the end of the year, but maybe I'd like a running back there a little bit better. But Antonio Brown there, you got 2 of the best wide receivers without a doubt on your team. They could finish the year number 1 and number 2. It wouldn't be surprising if that happened. So then with pick number 3, he did go running back. We went Jacobs from the Raiders. I like that pick. I thought he was good value there at pick number 11 in the 3rd round. And then we went running back again on the turn. We went with Mark Ingram. Hopefully a safe running back there who's going to be a starter for us every single week. Here's where it got a little interesting. Pick number 5, we went with Aaron Rodgers. He wanted to have an elite quarterback, and we went out and grabbed Rodgers at the 11th pick in the 5th round. So I would have much rather had a running back there in round number 5, and then we'd have a 3, 4, and 5 running backs all set up a little bit better and weighted on quarterback, but. It is what it is. Round number 6, we went with Lamar Miller. I think that had to be done. We needed one more running back in that situation. Round 7, we went with Allison from Green Bay. Backed it up with another wide receiver from Green Bay, Valdez-Scantling. So whoever the number 2 wide receiver is in Green Bay, we will most likely have them on our team with Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. So hopefully one of those guys takes off for this team. In round number 9, we went wide receiver again. Didn't like any running back value there. We went with James Washington falling to us at the 11th pick in the 9th round. In the 10th round, instead of going running back, we went with Drew Brees, thinking that he will be awesome at home and maybe plug in some huge numbers in half the games this season. So we've got 2 quarterbacks already in Rodgers and Brees. Running backs are only Jacobs, Ingram, and Miller. At wide receiver, I feel pretty confident with Tyreek Hill, Antonio Brown, and then Allison and Scantling. One of those guys will be good each week, followed with James Washington, another nice lottery ticket right there. So I feel good about the wide receiver position. The running back position is pretty awful because now you're going to be filling out this running back group with guys like Naheem Hines is still available as we come up here next. Who else do we have? Carlos Hyde, Kareem Hunt, who we won't be drafting. We have Justice Hill, Alexander Madison, Darwin Thompson. So you're really scraping out the bottom of the barrel here. And if we don't get some of these guys, then we're kind of screwed. Maybe Malcolm Brown later in Los Angeles. But, that running back position is really, really thin at this point. And we don't even have a tight end. So we're going to be, drafting the dregs in tight end as well. So I really would much rather have 2 more running backs right now than these 2 quarterbacks. But yeah, so that is kind of how I see these things shaking out. Whereas right now we have Rodgers and Breeze. Let me just show you who's still available at quarterback. At quarterback, we still have Ben Roethlisberger, Trubisky, Rivers, Cousins, Josh Allen, Jimmy Garoppolo, Tom Brady, Sam Darnold. So I would rather have the 2 running backs right now and take 2 of those groups with my next 2 picks. Give me Roethlisberger and Trubisky instead of Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers, and then I'll take 2 more running backs. Thank you very much. That's why I always say to wait on wide receiver, especially in this format, best ball, where you can take 3 kind of up and down guys, and hopefully one of them hits each week. Right. Anyway, that's it for the show today. Sorry for the long one. We had a lot of stuff to go through there. We will be back tomorrow on Monday on our regular scheduled show. We'll bring you all the news, and then we'll continue our NFL countdown extravaganza. We're getting closer and closer to the tip-off. Then I leave for Europe next week on Thursday. So I might do some pre-recorded shows. Hopefully I can record on the road as well. And at least if I can't bring you video, I can at least bring you audio to the show as well. So if you are only a YouTube watcher starting next week, Matt, you want to check out the iTunes feed or the Spotify feed as well. If you don't see the video pop up here, there will be some kind of podcast or YouTube video every day, but I'm just not sure if it's going to be easier to do on YouTube or on the podcast format. So if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating and a review. And if you are a parent, please check out mathradio.com. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.